you are a fan of pro wrestling, you have certainly come across some genius telling you,
You liked wrestling.
Yeah, still do.
Dude, you know that fake, right?
and while you don't have to be Sherlock Holmes to understand that this is a scripted show, that doesn't mean that what these athletes go through on a weekly basis isn't extremely dangerous, and not only can it, but it has led to extremely serious injuries. So let's take a look at the 10 times when the danger was real, and the limits of survival were tested like never before. But first, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of the amazing videos we'll be releasing. Number 10, Tazz. Injuries involving the head and neck are among the most terrifying in the world of professional wrestling, and the piledriver is one of the most feared moves of all. While it has become a distant memory in WWE, the piledriver still occasionally makes an appearance, usually with wrestlers like CM Punk using it in a mischievous manner, almost begging to be sent to the principal's office. That's because the risks associated with the piledriver are obvious. It involves the head of the opponent going directly to the mat. Now, regular piledrivers are already dangerous enough, but when it comes to spike piledrivers, we're talking about a much more lethal variation. In this move, the wrestler delivering it adds extra momentum, often jumping off the middle rope, and forces the opponent down with even more force, making it extremely risky. This is the type of move that Tazz experienced in ECW when he was hit with a spike piledriver by Too Cold Scorpio and Dean Malenko. The impact was so brutal that it broke Tazz's neck. Despite the severity of the injury, the true warrior he was, Tazz finished the match. However, when he was finally rushed to the hospital, the doctors were blunt with him. "This should have killed you." A phrase that echoes just how dangerous the world of professional wrestling can be, and how wrestlers constantly risk their lives to entertain the audience. Number 9, Cesaro. At Clash of Champions 2016, the audience was about to witness a terrifying moment that would be etched in the memories of wrestling fans forever. It was the final chapter of the historic Best of 7 series between Cesaro, the Swiss Superman, and Sheamus, the unstoppable Celtic warrior. Both were in an intense battle, but nothing could have prepared the crowd for what was about to happen. When Cesaro, with his unique skill, ran towards the ropes, it seemed like he was setting up for a typical tope, a quick and agile move, typical of his repertoire. But some echoed throughout the arena, and for a brief moment, silence took over. Fans were paralyzed, watching in stunned disbelief as Cesaro lay motionless. It was impossible not to think the worst. His fall looked so severe that many feared he had paralyzed himself in front of their eyes. When he finally moved, a collective sigh of relief spread through the crowd, but the gravity of the situation was still in the air. Given how he landed, especially with his head and neck involved in the impact, it's hard to believe Cesaro survived that accident, and even more incredible that he managed to continue his career, wrestling at high levels. Number 8, Hayabusa. When it comes to terrifying moments in wrestling, it's impossible not to think of the devastating falls. Often a slight miscalculation, whether a slight over-rotation or under-rotation, is enough to turn an incredible performance into a nightmare, where the line between health and the end of a career becomes incredibly thin. Hayabusa, one of the greatest and most respected wrestlers of all time, experienced one of these fatal falls. Known for his technical skill and his career in frontier martial arts wrestling, Hayabusa was an icon who never had the chance to shine on Vince McMahon's stage, but his legacy remains immortalized. However, on October 22nd, 2001, his career came to an abrupt and tragic end during a match with Mammoth Sasaki. Hayabusa was attempting a springboard moonsault, a challenging and risky move, when something went wrong. He slipped on the middle rope, lost control, and fell horribly, crashing onto his spine in such a violent way that he broke several vertebrae and was left paralyzed. The impact was devastating, and Hayabusa remained immobilized for almost 15 years, with an uncertain future. Despite everything, he fought against the odds and managed to regain the ability to walk. But tragically, this recovery came just 1 year before his death in 2016. Number 7, Chuck Austin. In the early 90s, Austin, with only 6 months of training, was given the opportunity to step into WWE. He was brought in to team up with Lanny Poffo and help elevate the Rockers' talent, being booked to lose to them in a match. During the match, Jannetty set up to deliver Austin the rocket dropper. For those unaware, it's essentially a fame-asser, but with an additional wrist twist, making the move even more impactful. The issue was Austin, taking the blow, landed directly on his head, resulting in an injury that instantly paralyzed him. The worst part was that Jannetty, unaware of the severity of Austin's injury, immediately rolled him for the pin, not realizing how serious the situation was. That action, which seemed like just a regular part of a wrestling match, could have easily been fatal. Austin, with determination, sued WWE and won the case, but the price was steep. To this day, he has never regained the ability to walk. The impact of that move and the tragedy that followed are remembered as one of the most horrifying moments in wrestling history. Number 6. Tyson Kidd. Few things in life demonstrate the cruel injustice of fate more than a miscalculated wrestling injury. Tyson Kidd, one of WWE's most reliable and talented wrestlers, spent years in the background, fulfilling his role with dedication, but never truly standing out on the main roster. However, everything seemed poised to change when he teamed up with Cesaro. The chemistry between them was undeniable, both in and out of the ring, and together, they became a promising duo on the road to the WWE Tag Team Championship, when an unforgivable accident happened, a devastating injury to Kidd's spine. It occurred during a match against Samoa Joe in June 2015, when Kidd was hit with a muscle buster, a move in which the victim crashes down heavily onto their upper back. Unfortunately, the impact went terribly wrong. As Kidd fell, he suffered a severe injury to his neck and spine, requiring screws and a rod to be inserted into his cervical column to ensure his survival. The injury was so severe that only 5% of people who suffer such an accident survive. Thankfully, Tyson Kidd was part of that small percentage, but what should have been the peak of his career turned into a personal nightmare. While he made a return to the ring on a few occasions, his career was never the same. Number 5. Mick Foley. Mick Foley has always been known for his willingness to flirt with death, building a legacy that constantly pushed the boundaries of pain and survival. He endured numerous near-fatal experiences, like the severe concussion he suffered in his iconic Hell in a Cell match with The Undertaker, or the brutal concussion in his I Quit match with The Rock. For years, he risked his body in unimaginable ways. However, one of the most terrifying and unforgettable moments of his career came during a match against Vader in Munich. During that match, Foley, ever the suicidal showman, enjoyed getting tangled in the ropes, making it look as though he was being strangled in a dramatic fashion. What he didn't know, though, was that he was unknowingly putting himself in serious danger. The ropes that he had wrapped around his neck had been pulled so tightly that he became stuck, and despite his efforts to escape, he couldn't get free. The pressure around his neck was so immense that he nearly lost consciousness, and just barely avoided death. In his struggle to break free, he ended up tearing most of his ear off. It was a moment that left an indelible mark on Mick Foley's career, demonstrating just how far he was willing to go to deliver an unforgettable show for the fans, even if it meant putting his life at risk. Number 4. Gangrel. At a time when WWE was full of extravagant and theatrical characters, it was almost inevitable that a gothic figure like Gangrel would get caught up in something so macabre. In the late 90s, he led his eccentric vampire group in a rivalry with The Ministry, the Undertaker's flamboyant and mysterious faction. Those times were intense, often absurd, and the violence in the ring seemed to know no bounds. In one particularly tense segment, Big Bossman was supposed to tie a rope around Gangrel's neck, throw it over the top rope, and simulate a hanging. However, what was meant to be a dramatic stunt turned into something far more dangerous. Despite concerns about the untested rope, Gangrel agreed to perform the trick. He was thrown over the top rope, but instead of the rope giving way as expected, it tightened violently around his neck, effectively choking him. The pressure was so intense that Gangrel began to feel as though everything around him was disappearing, as if he was on the brink of losing consciousness. Fortunately, the backstage crew managed to free him before he passed out, or worse, lost his life in that macabre stunt. Number 3. Darren Drozdov. At the peak of the Attitude Era, when all eyes were on WWE, one of the most severe and visible injuries in wrestling history took place. It was 1999 and Darren Drozdov was in the ring facing D'Lo Brown. The match seemed to be going as planned, but a fatal timing error changed Draw's life forever. During a running powerbomb, a move where the wrestler is lifted vertically and slammed back into the ring, things went terribly wrong. Draws, wearing a loose shirt, made it difficult for Delo to lift him properly, preventing him from positioning him correctly. As a result, when he was thrown back, Draws' head and neck were completely crushed by the impact, leading to a catastrophic injury. The moment was so horrific that WWE never aired footage of the match, and the accident became one of the most tragic and talked about incidents in wrestling history. Draws broke 2 vertebrae in his neck, leaving him immediately paralyzed and nearly killed on the spot. What was supposed to be just another showcase of skill turned into a dark milestone in the sport. After that, Draws regained some movement in his arms, but was never able to walk again, until his tragic death in 2023, becoming a grim example of the immense care that must be taken in wrestling. Number 2, Stone Cold Steve Austin. Steve Austin, a WWE legend, was nearly taken out of the game twice during his illustrious career. But what many people don't know is that there was another near-fatal incident that happened in 1999 when Steve Austin drove a monster truck on Raw. The segment itself went off without a hitch, but Austin nearly died preparing for it. He was sitting in the truck, in the waiting area with the engine running, waiting for his cue to enter. The waiting area was small and not ventilated, and Austin sat there for more than 3 minutes. To sum it up, Austin almost passed out due to the exhaust fumes. Yes, they almost killed Stone Cold Steve Austin with the fumes from a monster truck, and ironically, the segment Austin was about to attack involved The Rock performing a fake funeral for him. Number 1, X-Pac. X-Pac had always been a master of daring acrobatics, and among his most iconic moves was the Bronco Buster, where he would leap onto an opponent in the corner of the ring and dramatically land on their chest. But in 2013, that move led to something far more serious than anyone could have anticipated. During a match, X-Pac misjudged the execution of the Bronco Buster, and instead of landing on his opponent's chest, he crashed face first into the turnbuckle, the metal part of the corner. The impact was so severe that he suffered a deep laceration in a very sensitive area, his rectum. And the worst part is, he finished the match. However, the damage was so extensive that when he finally made it to the hospital, he was losing blood rapidly. Had he not been rushed to the hospital immediately, the outcome could have been fatal. After all, there are many noble ways to die, but tearing your own anus for dramatic effect in wrestling certainly isn't one of them. Which of these close calls shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and share it with your friends. See you in the next one.